For Sarah Mitchell, rock bottom had a basement and she was standing in it. 48 hours until eviction, $287 in her pocket, a 12-year-old daughter who hadn't complained once about sleeping in their car for 3 months. And now, standing in front of storage unit 217, filled floor to ceiling with black trash bags that every professional buyer had walked away from, Sarah was about to risk everything they had left. What she didn't know was that inside those bags were 15 families' last hope, and the answers to mysteries that had haunted a city for over 20 years, 14 months. That's how long it had been since David died. 14 months of watching their savings evaporate into medical bills and funeral costs, 14 months of job applications, 23 rejections, each one saying overqualified, which was just a polite way of saying too old at 52. 14 months of Emma's silent bravery, never asking why they couldn't go home anymore, never complaining when dinner was a shared sandwich from a gas station. Sarah's daughter deserved so much better than this. David would have known what to do. He always knew what to do. The storage facility auction was held on a cold Tuesday morning in November. Sarah had circled it in red on a newspaper she'd found in a coffee shop trash can. Public storage unit auction. Dozens of units, cash only. She'd counted their money 17 times the night before. $287. That was it. That was everything standing between them and absolute destitution. Emma had watched her mother count the bills, her brown eyes wide and trusting, and Sarah had felt her heart break into smaller and smaller pieces. The parking lot was filled with vans and trucks, professional buyers. Sarah recognized the type immediately. They had clipboards and flashlights and years of experience reading the value of abandoned lives. They moved in packs, comparing notes, strategizing about which units to target. Sarah felt completely out of place in her thrift store coat and worn sneakers, holding Emma's hand maybe a little too tightly. Her daughter squeezed back, a silent message of support that made Sarah's eyes sting with unshed tears. The auctioneer was a heavy-set man named Frank who'd been doing this for 30 years. His voice carried across the facility with practiced authority. Unit after unit went up for bidding. Furniture sets went for $800, $1,000, $1,500. Sarah watched the numbers climb, her hopes sinking with each sale. They couldn't compete with these people. This had been a stupid idea, a desperate gamble by a desperate woman who should have known better. Then they came to Unit 217. Frank cut the padlock with bolt cutters and rolled up the door. The smell hit them first. Musty, old paper, something vaguely floral like perfume that had gone stale. The unit was 10 by 15 and it was packed. Floor to ceiling, wall, with black trash bags. Just trash bags. Dozens of them, maybe 100. In the back, Sarah could make out the corner of a metal filing cabinet and what looked like a bookshelf, but mostly, it was just bags. Professional buyers started shaking their heads immediately. "This is junk," one of them muttered. "Nobody keeps anything good in trash bags." Frank started the bidding anyway. $500? Silence. The crowd had already moved on, checking their clipboards for the next unit. 400? Nothing. 300? Still nothing. Frank looked annoyed. $250? Do I hear $250 for this unit? Last chance, folks. This is your opportunity to... Sarah's hand went up. She didn't plan it. Her arm just lifted. Every eye in the crowd turned to look at her. Frank's eyebrows rose. "We have $250. Do I hear $275? The crowd was silent. Nobody wanted trash bags. Going once, going twice, sold to the lady in the back for $250. Cash or credit? Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. Cash. Emma tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, are you sure?" Sarah wasn't sure. She wasn't sure about anything anymore. But David used to say that sometimes you had to take a leap of faith. So she walked up to Frank's table, counted out $250 in worn bills, and signed the paperwork. She had 72 hours to clear the unit completely. That left them with $37. $37 to feed themselves, put gas in their car, and somehow survive until Sarah could sell whatever was in those trash bags, if there was anything worth selling, if this wasn't the biggest mistake of her life. Emma looked up at her with those trusting eyes, and Sarah forced a smile. "It's going to be okay, sweetheart, I promise." But she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. She wasn't sure she believed in anything except the cold, hard reality that they were running out of time, running out of money, and running out of options. They returned to the storage unit that afternoon. Sarah had purchased a cheap box cutter from a dollar store, and they'd eaten granola bars for lunch to save money. The facility was quieter now, most of the auction crowd long gone with their prizes. Sarah rolled up the door to Unit 217 and stared at the wall of black trash bags. "Where do we even start?" Emma asked. Sarah took a deep breath. "At the beginning, I guess." She grabbed the nearest bag, cut it open, and peered inside. Clothes. Women's clothes. Nice ones, too. Ann Taylor, Chico's, Talbot's, designer brands. And the tags were still attached. Sarah's heart started beating faster. "These aren't used, Emma. Look, brand new. Why would someone store brand new clothes in trash bags?" They opened another bag. More clothes, dresses, blazers, slacks. All high quality, all with tags attached. The sizes were consistent. Size 10, size 12. Whoever owned these had good taste and money to spare, or had money once. Sarah checked the receipts. Stuffed in some of the bags, the name jumped out at her. Margaret Chen. The same name on receipt after receipt. These all belonged to one person. But why trash bags? Why not proper storage containers or garment bags? Why abandon all of this? The third bag they opened contained shoes, dozens of pairs, 9 West Clarks, even a few pairs of designer heels that probably cost more than Sarah made in a week back when she had a job. In the fourth bag, they found purses, Coach bags, 6 of them. Sarah knew those retailed for $300, $400 each. Her hands were shaking as she set them aside carefully. This was good. This was really good. She could sell these online. Consignment shops would take them. This could buy them a month, maybe 2, of breathing room. Emma had moved to a different section of the unit. "Mom?" Her voice was strange, uncertain. Sarah looked up. Emma was holding a framed photograph. It showed a woman in her 60s, Asian, elegant, standing in front of what looked like a community center with a crowd of people applauding. The woman was holding an award. There was text at the bottom, "Margaret Chen, Community Leadership Award, 2003. Sarah took the frame from her daughter's hands, so her name was Margaret Chen, and she was important, or had been important. "What happened to you, Margaret?" Sarah whispered. They worked until dark. By the time they stopped, they'd opened 15 bags and found a small fortune in clothing, accessories, and shoes. Sarah estimated they could make at least $3,000 if they sold everything carefully, maybe more. It was the first hope she'd felt in months, but it was the 16th bag that changed everything. Sarah cut it open expecting more clothes. Instead, she found files, manila folders, dozens of them, thick ones stuffed with papers and photographs and newspaper clippings. She pulled one out at random and opened it. The tab read, "Maria Rodriguez, age 19, missing since March 1998. Sarah's blood ran cold. Inside the folder was everything. A photograph of a young Latina woman with a bright smile and long dark hair, police reports, witness statements, handwritten notes in careful script, timeline of last known movements, possible suspects with question marks, locations searched with dates and results. This wasn't just a collection of news clippings. This was an active investigation file, a professional investigation file. Sarah opened another folder. James Crawford, age 34, missing since June 2001. Same level of detail, same meticulous notes. Another folder. Rebecca Huang, age 27, missing since October 1995. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the files. Emma, standing beside her mother, looked pale. "Mom, what is this?" Sarah didn't answer. She couldn't answer. She was opening folder after folder, and every single one was a missing person. 15 folders in total. 15 people who'd vanished. 15 unsolved cases. 15 families who'd never gotten answers. And somehow, all of these files had ended up in a storage unit, stuffed into trash bags, abandoned and forgotten. Who was Margaret Chen, and why did she have all of this? Sarah sat down hard on the concrete floor. Her mind was racing. These were police files, or copies of police files, or maybe private investigation files. The level of detail was extraordinary. Someone had spent years, maybe decades, compiling this information, tracking leads, interviewing witnesses, documenting everything. But why? And why abandon it all? Sarah checked the dates again. The cases ranged from 1995 to 2008, 13 years of disappearances, different ages, different backgrounds, different circumstances, but they were all from the same city. This city, her city. That night, Sarah and Emma slept in their car in the storage facility parking lot. Sarah couldn't afford a motel, and she didn't want to leave the unit unguarded. Not now. Not with what they'd found. She held the 15 folders on her lap, reading through them by the car's dome light while Emma dozed in the passenger seat. Each file told a heartbreaking story. Maria Rodriguez had been a college student, last seen leaving her part-time job at a bookstore. James Crawford had been a construction worker, vanished after finishing a shift. Rebecca Huang had been a nurse, disappeared walking home from the hospital at night. Every file had the same haunting element. Families who'd never stopped looking, parents who died without knowing what happened to their children, siblings who'd spent decades searching, spouses who'd never remarried, never moved on, never found closure. Sarah thought about David. She thought about what it would be like if he'd just vanished instead of dying from cancer. At least she'd been able to say goodbye. At least she'd been able to bury him. These families had nothing, just questions that had gone unanswered for 20 years or more. The next morning, Sarah made a decision. She was going to the police. She didn't know if these files were evidence or just some obsessed person's private research, but either way, the police needed to see them. 15 families deserved answers. Emma agreed. That's what Dad would do, she said simply. He'd want to help people. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Her daughter was right. David had been a police officer before an injury forced him into early retirement. He'd spent his whole life helping people. If he were here, he'd know exactly what to do, and he'd absolutely insist they take these files to the authorities. The problem was that Sarah needed money, desperately. The clothes and accessories in the storage unit were worth thousands, but only if she had time to sell them properly. She had $37 left and a daughter to feed. She couldn't afford to be noble. She couldn't afford to do the right thing if it meant Emma going hungry. So Sarah made a compromise with herself. She'd take a few of the most valuable items, the Coach, purses and designer shoes, and sell them quickly for cash at a local consignment shop. That would buy them a week, maybe 2. Then she'd go to the police with the files. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best she could do. The consignment shop gave her $800 for 3 purses and 5 pairs of shoes. The woman behind the counter, a sharp-eyed dealer named Rita, had examined everything carefully before making an offer. These are good quality, real leather, authentication tags intact. I can move these fast, $800 cash, take it or leave it. Sarah took it. $800 felt like a fortune. She bought Emma a real meal at a diner, paid for 2 nights at a cheap motel, and filled the car with gas. They even had enough left over for Sarah to buy a notebook and some folders to organize her thoughts about the missing persons files. That evening in the motel room, Sarah spread all 15 folders across the bed. She started making notes, dates, locations, commonalities, differences. She wasn't a detective, but David had taught her how to think like one during their 25 years of marriage. Look for patterns, he used to say. Evidence doesn't lie, but it doesn't always speak clearly either. You have to ask the right questions. So Sarah asked questions. Why these 15 people? What connected them? The ages were all over the place. Teenagers to adults in their 40s. The locations of disappearance varied across the city. Different years, different circumstances. But there were patterns too. 13 of the 15 had been taken at night. 12 had been walking alone. None had been wealthy or particularly well connected. They were ordinary people, students, workers, people who wouldn't make national headlines, people whose cases might go cold because they didn't have the resources or media attention to keep investigations active. Sarah felt something click in her mind. Whoever took these people targeted the vulnerable, the forgotten, the ones society wouldn't fight too hard to find. Emma had fallen asleep watching television, but Sarah kept working late into the night. She pulled out her phone, the screen cracked from being dropped too many times, and started searching. Margaret Chen, community leader, awards. What else could she find? The search results were limited, but there was enough. Margaret Chen had been a prominent figure in the Asian American community, a social worker by profession. She'd run a nonprofit that helped immigrant families. She'd been honored multiple times for her community service, and she died 3 years ago, heart failure at age 72. Sarah's heart sank. So Margaret was dead. That explained the abandoned storage unit, but it didn't explain why she had all these files. Sarah kept digging. She found Margaret's obituary, survived by her sister, Catherine Chen, and several nieces and nephews. Preceded in death by her husband, Thomas Chen, and her daughter. Sarah stopped, breathing. Preceded in death by her daughter, Jennifer Chen, age 23, died 2009. Sarah's hands flew across the phone's cracked screen, searching for more information. Jennifer Chen missing, Jennifer Chen disappearance. And there it was, a news article from June 2009. Local woman missing. Jennifer Chen, 23, was reported missing after failing to return home from her job as a teacher's aide. Sarah grabbed the folders and started flipping through them frantically. Maria Rodriguez, James Crawford, Rebecca Huang. She went through all 15. Jennifer Chen wasn't there. Margaret's daughter wasn't in the files. But the last disappearance documented was Timothy Park in March 2008, more than a year before Jennifer vanished. Sarah sat back, her mind racing. Margaret had been investigating missing persons cases for years. Had she been trying to find a pattern? Had she suspected a serial predator? And then her own daughter disappeared and... What? Did Margaret continue investigating? Did she stop? Did she... Sarah's phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? There was a pause, then a woman's voice. Is this Sarah Mitchell? Sarah's heart started pounding. Yes. Who is this? My name is Detective Harriet Vulov. I work cold cases for the City Police Department. I understand you purchased storage unit 217 at yesterday's auction. How did you... Sarah started, then stopped. The storage facility must have records. The police must have been monitoring Margaret Chen's unit. Of course they had. I need to talk to you, Detective Vulov continued. Today, if possible, about what you found. They met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the police station. Detective Harriet Vulov was in her early 50s, African American, with gray threaded through her short natural hair and eyes that had seen too much. She was carrying a worn leather briefcase and wore a wedding ring that looked like it had been there for decades. Sarah brought Emma with her because she didn't have anywhere else to leave her daughter. Vulov ordered hot chocolate for Emma and coffee for herself and Sarah, and then she got straight to business. Margaret Chen was a friend of mine, she said quietly. She was also the most persistent woman I've ever met. Sarah listened as Vulov told Margaret's story. After her daughter Jennifer disappeared in 2009, Margaret had become obsessed with finding her. She'd hired private investigators. She'd done her own research. She'd compiled information on every missing person in the city, going back decades, looking for connections, patterns, anything that might lead her to Jennifer. The police had investigated Jennifer's disappearance, of course, but like so many cases, the trail had gone cold. No body, no witnesses, no evidence, just a young woman who'd vanished into thin air. Margaret believed there was a serial offender, Vulov explained. She thought someone had been taking people for years and the police just hadn't connected the dots. She brought me her research multiple times, tried to convince me there was a pattern, but the cases were so different, different victim types, different locations, different time frames. I couldn't see what she was seeing. Vulov paused, her jaw tight, and then Margaret died. Heart attack in her sleep. Her sister Catherine paid to keep the storage unit for a while, but eventually she couldn't afford it anymore. The unit went to auction, and now you have the files. Sarah met Vulov's eyes. Were the files evidence? Were they just the obsessive research of a grieving mother who couldn't let go? Vulov's expression was complicated. I don't know, she admitted. Margaret was brilliant, but she was also consumed by grief. I couldn't tell where the evidence ended and the desperation began. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out the folders. Then maybe we should look again. With fresh eyes. Emma, sitting quietly beside her mother, nodded. My dad was a police officer. He used to say every case deserves another look. Vulov's expression softened. David Mitchell. I remember him. Good cop. I was sorry to hear about his passing. Sarah felt tears threaten, but pushed them down. He would want us to help these families. All of them. Vulov studied Sarah for a long moment, then reached for the folders. All right, let's see what Margaret found. They spent the next 3 hours in that coffee shop, going through every file. Vulov had her laptop and she pulled up police records, cross-referencing Margaret's notes with official reports. Some of Margaret's information matched police files exactly. Other details were new, witness statements that hadn't made it into official reports, timeline reconstructions that showed gaps the police had missed. As they worked, a picture started to emerge. Margaret had organized the cases chronologically, but Vulov reorganized them by location and method. When you do that, Vulov said slowly, you start to see something. Look, 8 of these 15 victims were taken from bus stops or train stations, all at night, all alone, all in neighborhoods without good security cameras. The timeline is spread out, sometimes months between disappearances, sometimes years, but the pattern is there. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. So Margaret was right? There is a serial predator? Vulov hesitated. Maybe. Or maybe I'm seeing patterns because I want to see them. Confirmation bias, it's a real danger in cold case work. But yes, I think it's worth investigating further. She looked at Sarah. I need to take these files, make copies, run them through our system properly. Sarah nodded. Of course. Take them. Just promise me you'll follow through. Promise me these families will get answers. Vulov's expression was grave. I promise I'll try. That's all I can offer. Sarah supposed that would have to be enough. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah and Emma moved into a small studio apartment that Sarah rented with the money from, selling Margaret Chen's belongings. It wasn't much, barely 400 square feet with a kitchenette and a bathroom that had seen better days. But it had a roof and heat and a door that locked. It felt like a palace. Sarah continued selling items from the storage unit, carefully pricing everything online and at consignment shops. The money came in steadily, not enough to feel secure, but enough to eat regularly and pay rent. Emma enrolled in school again. Sarah started looking for work. Detective Vulov called once a week with updates. She'd taken Margaret's files to her captain. The captain was skeptical but agreed to let Vulov spend some time reviewing the cases. Vulov pulled the original police files for all 15 missing persons. She interviewed some of the original investigators, the ones who were still alive and working. She talked to families. She retraced Margaret's research step by step. And slowly, grudgingly, she started to believe Margaret might have been onto something. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah was at a thrift store, dropping off another load of Margaret's clothes, when her phone rang. Vulov's voice was tight with controlled excitement. We found a connection. 3 of the victims had the same unusual charge on their credit cards in the days before they disappeared. A small charge, less than $5, from a company that doesn't exist anymore, Shell Corporation that dissolved in 2010, but we tracked down the owner, man named Robert Keene. And Sarah, he has priors, assault, stalking. He served time in the early 90s. Sarah's heart was pounding. Where is he now? That's the problem, Vulov said grimly. He's dead, died in a car accident in 2015, but we're looking into his property records, his known associates, anywhere he might have kept people. We're also cross-referencing his movements with the timeline of disappearances. If we can place him near the locations where people went missing, we might be able to build a case. Even if he's dead, the families deserve to know what happened. Sarah thought about Jennifer Chen, Margaret's daughter. Was Jennifer one of Robert Keene's victims? Vulov seemed to read her mind. We don't know yet. Jennifer disappeared in 2009, which fits the timeline. But we need more evidence. I'm not going to tell her family anything until I'm sure. I won't give them false hope. Sarah understood, but she also understood that for the first time in 20 years or more, these cases were being actively investigated again because of Margaret's research, because of Sarah's decision to go to the police, because sometimes people who'd been forgotten deserve to be remembered. The investigation took 3 months. Sarah watched it unfold from a distance, receiving updates from Vulov every few days. The detective was tireless. She interviewed hundreds of people. She combed through property records and financial documents. She worked with the FBI to access databases and run advanced forensic analysis on evidence that had been in storage for decades. And piece by piece, the case against Robert Keene came together. He'd been a maintenance worker for the city's public transportation system. He had access to bus stops and train stations. He worked nights. He had opportunities. They found a storage facility he'd rented under a fake name. Inside were personal items belonging to 7 of the 15 missing persons: jewelry, IDs, photographs, trophies. The forensic team processed everything. They found DNA evidence, hair samples, fibers. They exhumed Robert Keene's body and confirmed DNA matches. It took months of painstaking work, but eventually Vulov came to Sarah's apartment with news. We've closed 5 cases definitively. We have physical evidence proving Robert Keene killed them. 5 families finally have answers. 5 people finally have justice, or as close to justice as we can get with Keene dead. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. What about the other 10? Vulov's expression was sad. We're still working on it. Some of the evidence is too degraded. Some of the connections are too weak. We may never be able to prove what happened to all 15, but we're trying. And at least now we know. At least now there's closure for some of these families. Sarah thought about Margaret Chen, investigating alone for years, trying to find her daughter, trying to save other people from the pain she was feeling. She never got to see this, Sarah whispered. Margaret never knew she was right. Vulov sat down heavily on Sarah's threadbare couch. No, she didn't. But I like to think she'd be proud. We're doing the work she started. We're finishing what she began. And there's something else. We found evidence that suggests Jennifer Chen was one of Keene's victims. We can't prove it conclusively, not yet, but the circumstantial evidence is strong. I'm meeting with Margaret's sister, Catherine, tomorrow to tell her. After 10 years, she deserves to know her niece is probably gone. She deserves to stop hoping and start grieving. The media attention came slowly at first, then all at once. Local news stations picked up the story. Homeless woman finds evidence in storage unit, helps police solve cold cases. The headlines were sensational, but the reality was sobering. 5 families had gotten answers. 10 were still waiting, and Robert Keene was dead. So there would be no trial, no testimony, no day in court where the families could face their loved one's killer. There was only the knowledge of what had happened and the beginning of the long, painful process of healing. Sarah was invited to a private ceremony at the police station. The families of the 5 victims whose cases had been definitively solved wanted to meet her. Sarah almost didn't go. She felt like a fraud. All she'd done was buy a storage unit and call the police. Margaret Chen was the real hero. Margaret was the one who'd spent years investigating. But Emma convinced her. They want to thank you, Mom. Let them. So Sarah put on her nicest thrift store dress and took her daughter to the police station. The families gathered in a conference room, parents in their 70s and 80s who'd never stopped looking for their children, siblings who'd lived their whole lives in the shadow of loss, spouses who'd never remarried, never moved on. They thanked Sarah with tears streaming down their faces. "You gave us closure," one mother said, gripping Sarah's hands. "You gave us the ability to bury our son properly, to know what happened, to stop wondering every single day if he might still be alive somewhere. Thank you. Thank you so much." Sarah didn't know what to say. She thought about David. She thought about how lucky she'd been to say goodbye, to hold his hand as he died, to know exactly where he was buried. These families hadn't had that. They'd had decades of uncertainty. And now, finally, they had answers. It wasn't happy. It wasn't a miracle. Their loved ones were still gone. But it was something. It was an end to the not knowing. And sometimes that was all you could hope for. Detective Vulov presented Sarah with a civilian commendation from the police department in recognition of extraordinary assistance in solving multiple cold case homicides. There was a check, too, a reward fund that had been established years ago for information leading to the resolution of these cases. The amount was $50,000. Sarah stared at it, unable to process. "This is too much," she whispered. "I didn't do anything." Vulov's smile was kind but firm. "You did everything. You could have thrown those files away. You could have ignored what you found. But you didn't. You brought them to us. You helped us give these families peace. You earned this." The families pooled together and gave Sarah another $25,000. It was everything they'd saved over the years, planning for the day they might need to hire investigators or offer rewards or travel to wherever their loved ones might be found. Now they didn't need it anymore. "We want you to have it," one father said, "for your daughter, for your future, so you never have to sleep in your car again." Sarah broke down completely. Emma held her while she sobbed, and the families, these people who'd suffered unimaginable loss, surrounded them both with understanding and compassion. With the money, Sarah paid off her debts. She paid 6 months of rent in advance. She bought Emma new clothes and school supplies. She bought herself a used car that didn't break down every other week. She set up a college fund for her daughter, and she started a nonprofit organization, the Sullivan Cold Case Foundation, named after Margaret Chen's married name and dedicated to helping families of missing persons investigate cold cases. Sarah wasn't a detective, but she could organize. She could research. She could use Margaret's methods to help other people find answers. Detective Vulov agreed to serve on the board of directors. So did Catherine Chen, Margaret's sister. So did 3 of the family members from the solved cases. They met once a month to review potential cases, offer support to families, and coordinate with law enforcement. It wasn't much. It wouldn't solve every case or help every family, but it was something. It was a legacy. It was Margaret's work continuing. 1 year after Sarah bought Storage Unit 217, she visited David's grave. She brought Emma with her and a bouquet of flowers from the grocery store. She told him everything about the storage unit and the files and the families and the foundation. "I kept your promise," she whispered, kneeling by his headstone. "I didn't leave anyone behind. I helped people, just like you always did." Emma knelt beside her mother and placed her own small bouquet next to Sarah's. "We did it, Dad. We made a difference. The city dedicated a memorial garden to the victims of Robert Keene. 15 names on a stone wall. 15 people who'd been forgotten for too long. 15 families who finally had a place to go to remember. Margaret Chen's name was on the wall, too, not as a victim, but as the investigator who'd never given up. The woman who'd spent her final years trying to find her daughter and ended up helping so many others." Sarah attended the dedication ceremony. So did Emma. So did Detective Vulov and Catherine Chen and dozens of family members and community members and people who just wanted to remember. Sarah still lived in her small studio apartment. She still shopped at thrift stores and clipped coupons and counted every dollar. But she had enough. She had a roof and food and safety. Emma was thriving in school. Sarah had found work as an administrative assistant at the police department, helping with cold case files. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. Every day she went to work, she knew she was helping someone. She was continuing Margaret's mission. She was making David proud. The foundation grew slowly but steadily. They helped 3 families in the first year. Small victories. A missing woman from 1987 found buried on property that had since been developed. A runaway teenager from 1995 located living under a different name in another state. A cold case homicide solved when the Foundation's research uncovered a witness who'd never been interviewed. 3 families, 3 sets of answers, 3 lives changed forever. Detective Vulov retired from the police force and came to work for the Foundation full-time. "I've spent 30 years working cold cases," she told Sarah. "I'm not ready to stop now." Together, they built a database. They cataloged unsolved disappearances and homicides going back 50 years. They looked for patterns. They connected dots. They gave families hope when they had none. And sometimes, just sometimes, they found answers. Emma grew up volunteering at the Foundation. She'd inherited her father's sense of justice and her mother's determination. By the time she was 16, she was helping with research, interviewing families, organizing fundraisers. She wanted to be a detective when she grew up, she said. She wanted to solve cold cases like Grandpa David and Ms. Vulov. She wanted to help people the way her mom had helped those 15 families. Sarah's heart swelled with pride every time Emma said it. 5 years after buying Storage Unit 217, Sarah received a letter. It was from Catherine Chen, Margaret's sister. Inside was a photograph, Margaret and Jennifer, taken at Jennifer's college graduation. They were both smiling, arms around each other, faces bright with happiness and hope and love. On the back, Catherine had written, "Thank you for finishing what my sister started. Thank you for making sure she didn't search alone. Thank you for giving her meaning even after she was gone. I know Margaret would be grateful. I know she'd be proud." Sarah framed the photograph and hung it in the Foundation's office, right next to a photo of David in his police uniform. 2 people who'd spent their lives helping others. 2 people who'd never given up on finding the truth. 2 people who'd left legacies that continued long after they were gone. And in between the 2 photos, Sarah placed a 3rd frame. It held the newspaper clipping from the day the memorial garden was dedicated. 15 names, 15 people who'd been forgotten, 15 families who'd finally found peace. The work was hard. The work was heartbreaking. Some cases never got solved. Some families never got answers. Some investigations led to dead ends and frustration and grief. But Sarah kept going. The Foundation kept growing. They helped 10 families, then 20, then 50. They collaborated with police departments and FBI agents and private investigators. They raised money for DNA testing and forensic analysis and investigative resources. They gave voice to the voiceless and remembered the forgotten. And sometimes, late at night when Sarah couldn't sleep, she thought about that moment in Storage Unit 217, the moment she'd cut open that 16th trash bag and found the files, the moment that changed everything. She thought about the choices she'd made, to go to the police instead of walking away, to use Margaret's research instead of discarding it, to honor the work of a grieving mother instead of dismissing it as obsession. Such small choices, such enormous consequences. Emma graduated from high school with honors. She was accepted to the state university with a scholarship to study criminal justice. On the day she left for college, Sarah drove her to campus in the used car they'd bought with the reward money. They unloaded boxes and set up Emma's dorm room, and then they stood in the parking lot saying goodbye. "I'm so proud of you," Sarah whispered, hugging her daughter tight. "Your father would be so proud." Emma pulled back, her eyes shining. "I'm proud of you too, Mom. You saved us. You saved all of us, all those families. You're a hero." Sarah shook her head. "I'm not a hero. I just did what was right." Emma smiled. "That's what heroes do, Mom. They do what's right even when it's hard, even when they're scared, even when they have nothing. You had $37 and a daughter to feed, and you still helped 15 families find closure. That's heroic." Sarah felt tears on her cheeks. She hugged Emma one more time, and then she watched her daughter walk into her dorm building, ready to start her new life, ready to make her own difference in the world. The foundation's biggest success came 7 years after Sarah bought the storage unit. They'd been working on a case from 1983, a young mother who'd disappeared, leaving her 2 small children behind. The children, now in their 40s, had never stopped searching. The foundation spent 18 months investigating. They interviewed dozens of people. They tracked down old police reports and witness statements. They worked with forensic genealogists to identify DNA from old evidence. And finally, they found her, buried on a property that had changed hands 6 times. The man who'd killed her was dead, but his confession had been documented in therapy records that the foundation uncovered. The 2 children, middle-aged adults now with children of their own, came to the foundation office to meet Sarah and Vulov. They brought flowers and tears and gratitude that couldn't be measured. "You gave us our mother back," one of them said. "We can bury her now. We can say goodbye. After 40 years, we can finally grieve properly. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for caring about a case everyone else forgot." That night, Sarah and Detective Vulov sat in the foundation office after everyone else had gone home. They were both exhausted, both emotionally drained, both deeply satisfied. "We did good work today," Vulov said quietly. "David would be proud," Sarah replied. "So would Margaret." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. 2 women who'd become unlikely partners. 2 women who dedicated themselves to helping others. 2 women who understood that sometimes the greatest heroism was simply refusing to give up. 10 years after buying Storage Unit 217, Sarah returned to the storage facility. She stood in the parking lot where she'd slept in her car with Emma, where she'd counted their last $37, where she'd felt so hopeless and desperate and scared. The facility looked the same chain-link fence, the same rows of orange doors, the same auctioneer, Frank, still running monthly auctions. But everything else had changed. Sarah had changed. She had a career now, a purpose, a mission. Emma was in her 3rd year of university, studying to be a detective. The foundation had helped over 100 families. They'd solved 23 cold cases. They'd given closure to people who'd waited decades for answers. And it had all started here, in this parking lot, with a desperate gamble on a storage unit full of trash bags. Sarah smiled. Sometimes miracles look like garbage. Sometimes hope looked like giving up. Sometimes the biggest discoveries came from the most unexpected places. She pulled out her phone and called Emma. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm at the storage facility, the one where it all started. Just wanted to tell you, I love you. I'm so grateful we went through all of that together. We survived, and we helped so many people survive too." Emma's voice was warm. "I love you too, Mom. And I'm grateful too. For you, for everything you taught me, about persistence and compassion and doing what's right even when it's hard. You're my hero. You'll always be my hero." Sarah ended the call and stood in the parking lot a few minutes longer. She thought about Margaret Chen, investigating alone, refusing to give up even when everyone told her she was wasting her time. She thought about David, her husband, who'd spent his life serving others. She thought about the 15 victims and their families and all the other families the foundation had helped. She thought about Detective Vuloff and Catherine Chen and everyone who'd believed in this work. And she thought about herself, a homeless woman with $287 who'd taken a chance on trash bags and ended up changing dozens of lives. The sun was setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. Sarah got back in her car and drove home to her small apartment. It still wasn't much, but it was hers. Paid for with work she was proud of, filled with memories of people she'd helped and lives she'd touched. She made dinner and checked her email and reviewed case files for tomorrow's foundation meeting. Just another evening in an extraordinary life that had started with the most ordinary of things: a storage unit, trash bags, and the decision to care about people everyone else had forgotten. Years later, when Sarah was much older and Emma had become a decorated detective with the cold case unit, people would ask Sarah about that day, the day she bought Storage Unit 217, the day that changed everything. What made you bid on it, they'd ask. What made you risk your last dollar on trash? Sarah's answer was always the same. I don't know. Desperation, hope, faith. Maybe David was guiding me from wherever he is. Maybe Margaret's spirit led me there. Or maybe it was just dumb luck. But I learned something that day. Sometimes the things that look most worthless are actually priceless. Sometimes the people who seem most forgotten are the ones who matter most. And sometimes, when you have nothing left to lose, that's when you find out what you're really made of. The Sullivan Cold Case Foundation continues its work to this day. They've helped over 300 families. They've solved 67 cold cases. They've brought closure to people who'd given up hope. They've remembered the forgotten and given voice to the voiceless. And it all started with a homeless woman, a 12-year-old girl, $287 and a storage unit full of trash bags that contained the most precious thing in the world: truth, justice, and the unshakable belief that every person matters. Every case deserves investigation, and every family deserves answers. For Sarah Mitchell, rock bottom had a basement, but it also had a way out. And that way out led to purpose, meaning, and a legacy that would outlive her. All because she took a chance. All because she cared. All because when she found those 15 files, she didn't throw them away. She didn't walk away. She did what was right. And sometimes that's all it takes to change the world.